Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 6, episode 26. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week I'm talking to Jeff, who happens to be in a nearby city just to the east of me in the neighboring state of Wisconsin. We talk about misophonia and OCD, his environment growing up with a tough-love dad and a younger brother who bore the brunt of many of Jeff's reactions. We talk about some of his past relationships as well as how he manages his miso these days with a very supportive wife and 3 young kids at home. We also talk about how he has been able to advocate for himself at his current job, and we even get some George Costanza references towards the end, so really a full episode in my books. Let me know what you think. You can reach me, as always, by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or find me on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. By the way, please do head over, if you haven't already, and leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen to this show, whether that's Apple or Spotify or wherever. It drives us up in the algorithms and is a free way to help reach more misophones. Thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters who have helped us get transcripts for every episode. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. All right, now here's my conversation with Jeff. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me, Adil. Good evening.
Yeah, so whereabouts are you located?
I'm in Wisconsin.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm over in Minnesota, just a state away.
Cool.
In St. Paul.
Oh, yeah, I'm near Eau Claire, so we're only an hour and a half away.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we could have met up somewhere. Anyways,
Yeah.
So what do you do over there?
I work for a civil engineering company.
Nice.
I'm not a PE, but I'm a designer, so
cool.
Live on civil most of the day and working on site design, subdivision designs for utilities and roads.
Nice. Okay.
How about yourself? Since I haven't listened to too many episodes before.
I'm also an engineer, but a software engineer.
Okay.
So currently running an engineering team. So I do a lot of coding, but also manage engineers. But we're all remote. I mean,
sure.
All the engineers that I've hired right now are based in Africa. So
oh wow.
And yeah, I just like to work. I've been working from home for a while, which has its benefits. Miso wise, as I'm sure we might
sure, yeah,
we might get into. I mean, how about yourself? Have you been working remote?
No, we're a small company, and we're pretty hands-on with contractors in the community and our clients with site visits and just keeping an eye on projects as they get constructed. So, and yeah, it's a very close-knit community. So we're in the office every day. I'm in the office, 45 hours a week, working away. Lots of triggers there, as you can imagine. I spend a good, between my home life and my office life, that's 95% of my life. So that's where most of my trigger managing is. And overall, everything's going pretty well for me. I've had some pretty rough times getting to where I'm at now in my life. I'm at miso wise. My life has been I've been pretty blessed overall in my life, but for miso specific related items, it's been a long and interesting journey. I'm 37 now, and I think I'm learning to manage things, a lot better than I did earlier in my life, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that gives us an opportunity to rewind all the way back. So when we're kind of some of your earliest, the earliest times you remember this being a problem, and kind of set the stage for like what was going on around then.
Sure. The earliest memories would, it's a little blurry, but I would have to say probably 7 or 8. And it came on strong, very strong. I was born and raised in Canada. So I lived in a small little farm, basically in the middle of the prairies, and I had one younger brother and my mom and dad, and we lived in the countryside. And instantly my brother and my dad became a major trigger in my life. starting around that 7, 8. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the usual sounds that I think trigger most misos. And then, but I also had very, very strong OCD as
Mm-hmm.
well, and they came on at the same time. So I was a light flicker, a checker, couldn't step on cracks, on a sidewalk. I'd have to go back and read.
Mm-hmm.
Just basically, I'm not sure if your listeners or you how familiar you are or how often you discuss OCD and how often that occurs alongside with miso. But yeah, very strong OCD, and that's what it was. I would say that was even stronger than the
Uh-huh.
miso things, and throughout my early teenage years, it would ebb back and forth between the miso and the OCD as to what was a stronger, more dominating thing in my life.
Do you just to pause there? Did the OCD and miso start around the same time, or did they start one? Did one start before the other?
You know, Given I was 7 or 8 years old, I don't know, but it feels like it all came on within a
Mm.
year or two around the same
What was?
time.
I'm curious. Like, what was happening around then? Obviously you said your dad and your brother were triggers for miso. Were they I don't know, were they noticing your reactions to either of those, OCD or miso, and what were their reactions? Maybe also including your mom.
Sure. Um, yeah, so they definitely noticed, especially the miso, because I would just act out
Mm-hmm.
intolerably towards them on it and wouldn't be able to be around them. And since my brother was younger, I'd act out aggressively towards him, and
Mm-hmm.
the typical behavior of a child probably going through what we go through. And but yeah, I mean, but I think my mom and dad just thought that was a behavioral thing,
Mm-hmm.
aside from miso. It's like, oh, he's just being a jerk towards his little brother. So I don't think the miso thing, and this is like early '90s, so I don't
Yeah.
know if if miso was if that word was even the
No, no,
misophonia
no,
was
no.
even a thing back then. But the OCD was what really was concerning them, because I would flick my lights for 5-10 minutes before I go to bed because I just couldn't do it one time. So that's what really got their attention. I was like, what is going on with this kid?
Yeah.
And then the sidewalk crack thing. Like, I'd be walking down the sidewalk with my dad, and I'd turn around and go back, and he's just like, what are you doing? And he wasn't the
Mm.
most patient fella, so he wasn't like a compassionate, like, let's talk about this. He's like, what is, like, he
Yeah,
would
yeah,
just
yeah.
lash out at me for you know being an idiot, or more or less it would be his
Right.
terms. And as a 8 or 9 year old at that time, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I can't step on a crack on a sidewalk.
Yeah. So their reactions were that kind of like name calling or um hey, I guess classic 90s and pre-90s kind of reactions, right? I mean, just like um not not really being super compassionate about mental health issues or and just thinking it's some kind of like boys being boys behavioral kind of thing. Or at
Yeah,
least the aggressiveness, I mean.
yeah. That's what. Well, and I didn't have the proper way to explain myself.
Yeah.
It was just you know, my brother's making this noise, and it was just like, well, we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why are you
Yeah.
getting so upset about that? It's like, I don't know. I am. I can't handle it. I can't be around it. Um,
Did they take you to any professionals to talk
yeah,
about any of this? Yeah.
actually, what it was quite a bit later. I think I was in junior high, so I was like 14. And I think he was, since it was such a small community, it was just a guy that came around once a week. And I think my mom set up an appointment, and I came over from the high school in town, and I went into this appointment, and it was my dad and my mom. And my dad, one of the biggest triggers that he had, and this was just a visual at this point, was him wiggling his toes. He was
Hmm.
just a chronic, like, toe wiggler, and it didn't make a noise, but it was another. I don't even know what that is. It's just a visual trigger, not directly miso related, because it didn't really have a sound unless his like foot was under uh like a blanket on the couch and I could hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
but
wrestling. Yeah.
yeah, the wrestling. But for me, that was just a very strong visual one all my life. Like I wouldn't be this anyway. So he's sitting there with my mom and the counselor, and he's just sitting there wiggling his toes. And he knows by this time I'm 14, so he knows that I can't handle that. And I don't. He's not
Oh,
doing it purposely, but it's
right.
just what he
He's just
does.
not doing it.
Yeah, it's just he just is always doing that. And then as a 14-year-old, I was like, what are you guys trying to like do here? I mean, and I literally just walked out. I don't think I lasted 5 minutes,
Hmm.
and that was basically the one and only attempt that my
Really?
parents
Okay.
had. And
How did they go afterwards when you went home?
how were they afterwards? I
Yeah.
don't remember.
It's just we don't
There
talk about that
there wasn't
anymore.
a lot of communication in general
Yeah.
in my family. Uh,
What about before? So let's say, I mean, going back even before you started to show signs of other OCD. I know it's getting back into obviously even fuzzier memories, but I'm curious, like, was your dad generally kind of, you know, not super compassionate in general? Like, you even would there be name calling from any family members in general around the house before any of that started? I'm just curious, kind of like
sure.
how you were, treat. Obviously, you were loved by your parents, but sometimes it's just a lot of like a rough banter going around in the house. I'm just
Yeah,
curious, kind of what was it? Because for a young person, sometimes if you're not able to kind of like know the difference, you could take things personally and maybe, um, things could affect you. So I'm just trying to see what was maybe the home life was.
sure. Yeah, it was relatively good, I think,
Yeah.
compared to how a lot of people have it. But I mean, it was not all roses. My dad was a pretty rough and tumble guy. He had his issues with alcohol, and
Hmm.
he wasn't like a belligerent drunk or anything like that. He was more like a social, just always like to have his pals over. And he was 38 when he married my mom, and there was 13 years difference. And I
Hmm.
wasn't born until I was his firstborn at 40. And he was just tired out, and he'd been through a lot of life already, and he just what I don't think he was totally into the taking care of little babies and kids and all that.
Hmm.
He liked
Hmm.
spoiling us, and doing things, but when it came to
Yeah.
like the hard stuff, the everyday stuff, that was my mom. That was on my mom to take care of. He was going to do his thing. So, and there was always friction. My mom and dad eventually split up by the time I was 12. So all that time leading up
Uh,
until then, it was not a healthy relationship. And I got a few home videos from when I was younger, and that's basically my only real look back at it. Just catching some of
hmm.
those glimpses. But yeah, he was what you call tough love.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotcha. Okay.
So not a lot of communication. He was not one that really, explain things.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
did the miso and OCD kind of like further wedge you from him and the rest of the family? I'm curious, like even later into life.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't just sit with him
Hmm.
because he'd have like two major triggers that he would just always do, and I just couldn't be with him. And for so much of my life, that was just so frustrating, and I just couldn't be around him. So yeah, I mean, it's caused huge uh, problems. I mean, it's all said and done now. I mean, he's passed away 4 years ago, I guess 3 years ago. Um, going on 4 years here, yeah. So, but yeah, it's. I mean, it's one of my. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it now.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Did he ever
It,
come around? Did you obviously, did you talk about it later in life?
no,
Yeah.
no, no, we never did. It was just I don't know what he thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was just kind of frustrated and bewildered, and I don't know what he said behind closed doors, other people. Like, I'm just, I kind of get an impression that I'm a bit of a little bit off, I guess, is maybe how he would
Mm,
characterize me.
yeah.
Um,
Did so it sounds like around 14 years old you had the misokinesia too. You're probably aware of the term, the visual triggers.
the visual, no, I'm not.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's generally called misokinesia, like
Mm.
Kinesia. So I mean, a lot of people have the visual triggers. They usually come after misophonia, the auditory ones. So I guess, yeah. How were things kind of at school? Like, were you getting triggered at school? Were friends noticing?
Believe it or not, the the miso and the visual triggers, they just I if they were there, I don't remember them. During school is mostly an OCD thing, and yeah, I just don't ever remember being triggered in that environment, which now I wouldn't be able to handle. So it was I don't know if it was just the excitement and of being there and having friends and so much on the go, it just distracted me from it. But all my
Yeah, yeah.
triggers during that time were at home. Yep.
Gotcha. And was mom ever a trigger?
She
Or
became one later in
yeah,
life.
yeah,
She was she's a quiet person, so
yeah.
but she did she does have this thing that she did later on, at least that I noticed later on, where it's like an anxiety thing where she like picks her thumb skin or
Uh,
whatever.
yeah,
Which,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that became one and still is one. I don't see her very often, but yeah, it just comes right back whenever I do see her.
Yeah.
But no, she was pretty minor. It was mostly my brother and my dad.
How did your mom take, or how did she take your misophonia?
She was a lot more compassionate about it.
Yeah,
Yeah. She just always was more, or at least showed more concern about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone else in your family, any on any side, shown any, I don't know, signs of misophonia?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, yeah,
No.
yeah.
I have quite a few aunts and uncles and cousins, and and if they do, I haven't heard about it. I mean, I'm pretty distant. They're all in Canada, and I live in Wisconsin now. So
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't. In the last 15 years of my life, I just haven't really been too close with my
Mm-hmm.
family. So I'm not. I'm not up on what's going on up there in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, no. I know I grew up, from 7 to 17. I didn't talk about it. I mean, I knew I had the OCD thing, and some of my friends would catch me flicking lights and doing weird things, and they'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, "What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing?" And I would try to hide it, like, "Oh no, I just," I
Yeah.
was like, I make up an excuse, like a total, like, "Oh, I'm doing this thing," like, uh, and try to detract or deviate from what I'm actually doing, which was just getting stuck in this mental, carousel. Um, so I
You
was
felt a little
very ashamed
shame.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
didn't, I was a relatively popular, cool guy, and I
Of
tried to
course.
hide it.
Yeah. Yeah, the shame and also guilt is another common feeling, especially when there's situations where we're kind of the misophonia leads to driving wedges, distance between family members. I don't know if you ever felt that as the years went on.
Yeah, I'm just not close with my brother at all, and I think it.
Okay, yeah. So right. So yeah, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there, but
Yeah,
right. So I'm curious, kind of. Obviously, you were aggressive with him early on. How did that relationship um, grow? It seems like it didn't really grow
I
that
don't think it
close.
grow. I think it. I think what the way I acted towards my brother caused him harm, psychological
Mm,
harm, which is ingrained in him at such a deep level that he can't get over it. Even though we're both in our 30s now, I don't think he. Yeah, it's just it. We'll never be close. I've made efforts and reached out. And I've talked openly about it, but he's just I don't know. I think he's just like got burnt at such a deep
Yeah.
level from such an early age where he just doesn't want anything to do with me. I mean, we're
Yeah.
civil. I mean, we'll hang out and
Hmm.
and whatever, but we're not. And maybe that's just part of his personality. Maybe he's a little bit more like my dad that way. He just
Hmm.
like, yeah, whatever, let's just watch a hockey game and drink beer or whatever. Don't worry about it. We don't need
Yeah.
to talk about that. He's just a little, but I don't know if that's just if that's him or if it's also partially to do with just our history growing up,
Yeah.
or a combination of both.
So your history that those early years was basically primarily due to your misphonic reactions, right? I mean,
Yep.
the way you say everything about him being burnt, you can directly pretty much attribute to that.
Basically, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because we just sitting there playing, having a good time, and all of a sudden he'd have a trigger, and by that point he knew it was a trigger, but he couldn't help it, and I would just act irrationally towards him on
Did he
that.
ever try to do it on purpose, or was it he just couldn't help it? And
Sometimes, yep, yeah,
yeah.
especially when he was younger, because he knew that I would react, and then when I
Hmm.
reacted, I would get in trouble.
Yeah. 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 Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Of
Yep,
course.
because he
Okay.
would run to mom or dad, and then dad would get
Yeah.
ticked off at me, and then I'm the one getting in trouble. So
Right.
he would play that game when he was younger.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah.
So then, yeah, interesting. Okay. And then, so you said you hired a lot from friends. So let's say you're getting, I mean, so yeah, so school. Yeah, interesting. Like school for me, obviously don't. I also don't. By the way, I also was born and raised in Canada,
Cool.
not on the prairies, but over in Ottawa,
Hmm.
and also left around. I'm a little older than you, so I left around 20 years ago.
Okay.
So, anyways, digression. But as you then went to college, obviously, how, did you mention it to anybody? Uh, Obviously, you've mentioned to your wife. I'm just curious. When did you start to tell people,
Well,
if you did?
I don't think I became really open about it until my early 30s.
Hmm.
So I still went through. I basically whatever I was doing through high school, I kept that going through my 20s with
Hmm.
trying to hide it. And there's a whole bunch of relationships and things in there that got
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
messed up because of it.
Yep.
Um, so it took a long time for me to be comfortable with who I was, and with my wife and I, we didn't meet until 6. Man, I'm bad with time. 6 or 7
Years
years
ago.
ago,
Okay.
and
Yeah, years ago. Yeah.
and I'd messed up enough relationships by that point where I was like, okay, here it is. I'm gonna lay it all out for
Here's
you.
Jeff.
Yep. And
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that she knew what she was getting herself into. Um, and yeah, and she's been great about it. Obviously she's a major trigger in my life now. I knew she was going to be a major trigger in my life
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
forward. By that point, I wasn't under any false, notions
Hmm.
or utopian vision that it just wouldn't happen. Yeah, I knew it would.
Hmm.
Um, and she's been awesome about it.
Was she triggered from the beginning, or
Was
you
she a
just
trigger? No,
yeah, from the beginning? Okay.
no. I mean, but I knew, like, based on previous relationships that I had in my
Yep.
20s, that they would be a trigger by like
Eventually,
3 to 6 months. Like once you get over
after the
that
honeymoon
real
period.
blissful
Yeah.
3 6 months, a year, uh, things would start becoming triggers. And so I knew that that would happen. Um,
I
yeah.
guess when did you y- but so it wasn't bothering you in school, but obviously this was an issue in life in general, obviously, and obviously you knew it was a problem with your parents. When did you find out it had a name?
It's probably in my mid 20s,
Yeah.
around the
Okay.
time.
10, 12 years ago. So around the time of that New York Times article.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw that, and I don't know. I mean, how I came across it. I think I by that time, uh, I was living on my own, having my own internet connection. Smartphones were not quite, or at least I didn't have one. I was just
Hmm.
doing more independent research and threw some combination of words together in a search engine and came across it. I don't know how or when exactly, but and it was like a revelation to me. I was like, what on earth? There's other people that have this,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know? Um,
What did you think it was before then? Did you think it was like some offshoot of OCD?
yeah, I mean, OCD was already a thing. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if I spent too much time thinking about what it was. In, I think I spent more of my time just trying to figure out how to survive with
Yeah.
it, you know, just dealing with coping mechanisms, just trying to keep up with life. And still to this day, I don't spend, too much time researching it or looking into it.
Right.
I, I just live my life as best as I can. I try not to think about it too much. And those are usually my best days. Sometimes I can get away with in a in a trigger in an event that shouldn't trigger me, and get by it pretty quick. And I look back and I'm like, I don't understand how I coasted through that situation. But
Yeah.
so maybe that's gonna be easier going forward. But
Well, it's interesting. So, how have your maybe coping mechanisms evolved? Like back when you didn't know what it was, what were some of the things you're doing, and then any useful things you've learned along the way that you use
sure,
now?
well, I would say that okay. So we already established that I didn't really have any miso triggers in high school and junior
Right.
high. And then I didn't go into college right away. I went into college when I was 27. So there's a decade there of other things that
Mm.
happened, and those were primarily OCD years. That was a lot of checking. And then when I went to college, and shortly before I went to college, the OCD or the miso came on harder in my mid 20s, and
Mm.
has so from 25 ish till now my OCD has been basically gone, and now it's full on miso, and it's basically 99% miso. So for whatever reason, I did a very hard switch in around my mid 20s, where my miso triggers were only one or two people. Now my miso triggers from 25 onward have been everywhere,
Wisconsin. Yeah.
everywhere, public restaurants,
Yeah.
just you name it. Like everywhere I go is a strategy. So I forgot your actual question there. My coping mechanisms, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was in college, for whatever reason, the miso was on strong, and so I'm like 27 through 30 when I went to college.
Yeah.
I would wear earplugs and basically wrap like my hoodie around my head when I did
Mm-hmm.
exams.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
was almost at the point where I I knew that they had like these special areas where you could go for special
Right.
needs, like a quiet room,
Accommodations.
instead
Yeah.
of having to write the exams in the common hall with everybody else who's, you know, everyone's sick. There was no COVID at the time, so who cares? Everyone's sick,
Right.
and
Right.
like I don't know how I get through those exams, but I remember having the people, the instructors coming up to me and asking me if I'm okay, because they couldn't even see my face hardly, except for my
Yeah.
eyes. You know, just I always wore headphones everywhere I went, on bus rides and every time I went to the diner. Just your typical blockage
Yep.
mechanisms. Um, yeah, that that was that, and then
And
um,
then to this day, it is pretty much that. Is that that's kind of what you're doing everywhere, or
yeah,
have you added anything new?
uh, like at my office job, I have my own office.
Mm, nice.
Um,
Did you ask for that?
no, we all have it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I made when I took this job 3.5 years ago, and I told them about my miso in the interview
Uh-huh.
before I even took the job. I was
Ah,
like, I think they just brushed it off,
you
or
need to
like,
shut the f up if I get this job.
well, I was just like, just so you know,
Right.
I am gonna have to wear headphones. I didn't. I don't think I like told them about the miso. I just said like I have this. I don't remember what I said, but I don't think they took it seriously, because it's like within the first 6 months to a year, it was hell. I mean,
Yeah.
they were like, "You have to have your door open." I'm like, "No, I don't." And you have to do this. I'm like, "No, that's not how it's going to work, because I can." And then eventually one day I had a bit of like I had an anxiety attack because they were just
Mm.
pushing me, and I was like, "Look, you do not understand." And I had to just lay it out like as black and white as I could. And ever since then, I mean, it's been amazing how supportive they've been. Um,
Mm.
I mean, I wear headphones all day, every day. I have a fan going in my room. You know, I said, look, like, I mean, you want me to be an efficient employee? I want to work here. I need to have, I know I need to have a few minor little things.
Yeah.
It's not like a convenience thing. It's like a necessity.
Yes.
Um, so, they've been really, really helpful. We've actually uh, are undergoing an office renovation right now. So we're expanding our offices and redoing a few things. And they renovated my office, and I think they put in extra or some sort of special insulation in the walls for my
Yeah.
new office. So they've been very miso aware, and yeah, it's been amazing. I have great bosses.
Do you know what kind of insulation they put in
I
there?
don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Be
don't know.
curious.
I'd have to check and ask. I haven't tried it out yet because
Yeah.
I haven't moved into it, so I don't know how good it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I got some major triggers at work that are tough to deal with, and um,
By major triggers, you mean individuals or just
yep,
sounds around the office?
no
Okay.
individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm at a
Um.
place in my life right now where I'm. It's embarrassing to talk about, but I will mention it, and
Hmm.
I
In the
I'm
office, or
with my coworkers.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
like, look, it's nothing personal. I really ease into it. You
Yeah.
know, I, I I'm just much more mature in my life, I think, where I can present it in a way that's not going to offend them.
Do you think about how do you, is it one of those things where you hear you hear a trigger and then you kind of know how to ease into it, or do you kind of plan it out for a few days to have to kind of psych yourself up for it?
I don't really plan it. It just
Yeah.
sort of happens spontaneously.
Mm.
And I don't even know if it will ever happen. But I guess I just get to a point where, if we have a newer coworker, uh, I just sort of, it just naturally comes up in a conversation. And I have other
Right.
coworkers where it's never come up, and it probably never will, because we don't have that jive, that personality where we would
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they would understand, maybe, perhaps.
Hmm.
Um, I got so many abilities now to cope with it, with the individual office and everything. I have a lot of ability to just block it out. So there's no real necessity to go down that road, I don't think, because most of the time I can't hear it. So it's great.
Yeah. And it hasn't affected your, I don't know, your job viability, your growth prospects at the company, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
fairly well.
Yeah. Going back to one thing, yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up again was you said your OCD had gone down around the time that miso came up. Were you doing any therapies for OCD? Like, do you know why that may have
No,
decreased?
I
Yeah.
have
Okay.
no idea why that went away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, I've never done any therapies. I
Mm.
mean, other than like, I haven't intentionally done any therapies for it. I've done things in my life that may have alleviated it. I know in college I started doing like a lot of hot yoga. I was doing hot yoga like
Uh-huh.
4 or 5 times a week. I was just going
Very
crazy
college
with
thing.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe just doing that regular exercise helped with it. I mean, I'm not doing that anymore, but
Yeah.
maybe at that time that helped. But I have no idea um, why. Maybe it's just a total neural shift in my brain
Hmm.
for whatever
Hmm.
reason.
Going back to, I guess, your Yeah, I guess your wife now. So she said she's super supportive. What kind of things does she? Let's say, how do you guys deal with it? Basically, is she just kind of like always careful, or do you have this rapport where you can kind of mention if there's a trigger and then she'll step back, or
Yeah,
just curious kind of how that dynamic is.
she's super careful.
Hmm.
Um, and unfortunately, she has the most triggers of anyone in my life right now. Because we spend so much time together. But I mean, like for instance, she knows that we just don't eat together.
Hmm.
So it's not a question of like if we are going to. It's just
It's normalized
it's
that you don't.
normalized.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
am I going to eat first or are you going to eat first? That sort of
right.
thing. It's just a normal thing. Uh,
When you go out to eat, if you go out to eat, what happens?
I usually focus on just eating my food, and
Yeah,
I can't, I usually don't look at her because
right, right.
yep,
Or anybody else in the restaurant.
yep, pretty much,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
And I try to time, I try to time my, you know, eating with hers to make sure I don't finish before her. Because usually, if I'm eating,
Mm,
then I
you're
have
sitting
enough
there.
noise going on with my eating that I won't be able to
Right.
hear her, right? So I try to make sure I eat slow enough that,
That's an interesting tip. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I usually just eat in general. I'll just eat so fast because I
oh,
just want to kind of get out of there. But obviously, you can't in every situation. So you're just kind of stuck sitting there.
yeah, no, we, yeah, I try to eat slow and I'm like watching her say, oh, gee, she's got about a third of a burger left. And I have a half. Okay, we're good. She'll be done before me. That'll help.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Have you ever had do you throw the glare? Like, you have like glares at people in public that you throw,
Yeah,
or have you ever?
I'm a hardcore glarer. Yep.
Awesome. We'll have to compare our glares when we hang out. Did have you ever gotten like a bad reaction from somebody who just maybe is kind of put off by your reactions?
um, I think I had a lot in college.
Mm.
Where I'd glare at people, and I don't think they knew what was going on if I was even looking at them.
Yeah.
Like, because they would just be so innocent. Like, well, what did I do? They can't be glaring at me. Like, but I'm just here slurping
I'm
my
just here slapping.
noodles.
Right.
So I don't think I've had. I'm trying to think. That's an interesting question. I'm sure there have been a lot. Um, no, I
Well,
can't
how
think of
about
any off the top of my head. But
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, maybe how about those like early relationships that you said kind of
yes,
went awry? I'm sure there
yeah,
was some
mm-hmm.
some stuff happening there.
Yeah. I can think of one vividly where I had a girlfriend and we'd been together for probably a year and a half at this point, and the triggers were coming on strong, and we were past the honeymoon phase,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and she's sitting there, she kind of ate like a chipmunk, like really fast, you know.
Yep.
But like she didn't eat with her mouth open or anything like that, but still, it was just like
Right.
a really fast chomp, and I'm like just
Mm-hmm.
looking
Mm-hmm.
at it, and she like would just like slam the fork down and be like, "What?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, and I wasn't at a point where I would discuss this with her. I was
Right.
still in hide it mode. So, and then I, I was 25, still pretty young and stupid, and didn't have the ability to talk about it. And yeah, it
Yeah.
probably led to that relationship. You know,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it's
Didn't
inevitable
help.
failure.
Right. 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 Have you thought about I don't know if you have kids, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have three.
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um how's that going?
Yeah, they're 4, 3, 1, and just in the last 6 months, I've
Four-year-old.
my 3-year-old actually
Oh,
has been
okay.
starting a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I will fight and argue with her to eat because she's so picky and won't eat, and then when she
Yeah,
finally
yeah.
starts eating, it's just the worst open mouth like.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
okay, well, I just fought with her for 10 minutes to get her to eat. Now I can't get her on her case about this.
Right.
But we are very we are very manners oriented. Like
Mm-hmm.
this, we don't chew with our mouth open, and we were just trying to be very respectful around the table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's interesting though, because the kids never haven't really asked questions about like why isn't mom
Why
ever
you're waiting.
eating when we're eating, and vice versa. I'm sure that will come, but
Yeah.
um, surprisingly and thankfully, that the triggers haven't been coming on very quick or strong with the kids, and I don't know why, but I'm just yeah, very. I was very worried about that, um, and I still am because there's a lot of life left to live, hopefully,
Yeah.
and yeah, so we'll see. I mean, there's probably things on the way.
Yeah, and I think in most not in everybody, I think in most cases, like somehow your brain does not assign a threat to your own children. So, um, I think hopefully they'll continue mostly to to be not triggers in most cases. So,
Okay, so
hopefully that is the
you,
case. Yep.
I think I missed some. You said typically that that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I just mumbled my words. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
what I'm going to say is, yeah, I think typically, and this is not always the case, but typically the brain doesn't seem to, well, whatever mechanism it is, doesn't assign because your brain thinks you're in danger,
Hmm.
and I think what happens is, at least in my personal case, but also a lot of people I've heard, like kids, I think the kids usually don't end up being a trigger unless it's like something totally egregious because they just don't feel like it's much of a threat. Your brain can kind of know that,
Hmm.
hey, these are my like
Sure.
my tribe kind of thing, my flesh and blood, literally. Uh, and so yeah, if they're mostly not a trigger now, that I'm knock on wood, they'll continue to be kind of safe for you for a while. Um, and if that's the case, then yeah, around the time maybe when you got it, like 8, 9, 10, that's when even I'm starting to think about just trying to be conscientious of like them not developing triggers. Um, and so then the question is like, how do we kind of like you know do we not talk about it too much in the hopes that just by kind of not making a big deal about it, they hopefully they won't get triggers. Um, and so, yeah, there's always a debate as to how much to tell your kids,
Hmm.
basically, about your own misophonia. Because if there are cases where talk about it, if somebody talks about it a lot, you're afraid that they might be more sensitive, in general to the sound, but also not wanting they. I know I hear kids will try to because they want to protect you, and so they'll start to listen for the sounds and start to develop misophonic symptoms. I've heard that on some episodes. So um that's kind of heartbreaking too, is they're trying to take care of you and then they become misophonic.
Sure.
um well, you still have a few years, maybe we could talk about it in about 5-10 years
Yeah.
when they get to that age, but there's kind of a, yeah, I guess kind of a debate or kind of like interesting discussions around that. Did your wife and you and your wife kind of discuss like how, if it comes up with your kids in terms of like them asking about it, how you'd broach the subject?
I know she's brought a few conversation pieces forward, and I think it's mostly because she listens to your podcast. So I know she's thinking about it.
Oh, so she's heard quite a few of these
Yeah.
episodes. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I don't know, quite a few. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
she
yeah.
she listens to every one now.
Wow, okay.
Um,
So then she's heard quite a few parents.
right.
So
And you know, yeah, I just I try not to think about it too much. I think I mentioned that earlier, where
mm-hmm.
I try not to think about it with the kids, and I, I guess there is still an element of just I'm a normal person. I don't really talk about it much. This I've talked about it with my wife a few times, and this hour that we're spending together is like
Yeah,
literally the only times in my life that I talk about this.
yeah. I mean, we the fact is we don't want to talk about it. The funny thing is, like, I think a
Yeah,
lot of people are like, you're into this weird thing. You just can't, like, just stop thinking about it. I'm sure you think about it all the time, and that's why you have it. When we don't want to think about it, and
right.
usually we don't, and that's why it comes off as such a surprise and then triggers us
Yeah,
because
right.
we're really busy we're not even trying not to think about it. We're really not thinking about it. So, um, yeah, that's not uncommon.
But yeah, I think my wife is definitely taking the lead in you know, in what
Mm-hmm.
you were just discussing on like, do we talk about with our kids or not?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
to me, I'm just like, I'm out of the loop. You know, I don't I don't think about these things like if should I talk to my kids about it or not. I'm just always in like trying to be moving forward and if I have a great day, great. And
Yeah.
what, like last night we went out for supper. It was a work party, a late Christmas party that we had, and on the way home, my wife asked me, she's like, how was that for you? And I was like, oh, it was great. She's like, you weren't bothered? I'm like, no. We were in this like quiet banquet room with no
Oh, not even a
music,
lot of white noise. Oh,
no white
wow.
noise, nothing. It was, and the conversation was a little light and awkward. There's not a lot of noise, like
Yeah.
the good noise, like the white noise.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we're all eating, and I don't know if what it was, if it was just the conversation, but it was just a breeze for me
Yeah. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
but usually I typically do well when there's a lot of people eating, because it just kind of becomes this one.
A little bit of white noise.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And I never even thought about it. Usually I'm thinking about it, but in this case, yeah, I don't know what it was. If how to mimic that, or
Yeah.
to know what needed to be in place for that to
You have
happen.
to capture that in a bottle.
Yep.
Yeah. You have to reno your dining room to look exactly like that. I'm curious about your wife's family, like your in-laws. Do they know about it?
They do. Yep. Because my wife is very social and
Right.
talks with them, and they're all in this area. Yeah, and
Gotcha.
we actually lived there for about a year and a half while we were
Mm-hmm.
building our home where we live now. So they were kind enough to house us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so most of them became triggers while I lived there,
Okay.
and still are triggers now.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where, I don't know, it was maybe more of an in-law thing. I wasn't so kind about it, but I wasn't
Mm.
shy about it either. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I've just been struggling with it for so long. I was just like, you know what? If I feel pissed off, I'm just gonna act pissed off. And it's maybe a little childish, but it was just a stressful time in my life with trying to get a home built, and then I got my sister-in-law who's baking a cake, and she's got to lick every finger off and like things like that. And there's a lot of whistling and humming. They're a very musical family, but I cannot handle whistling and humming. I like singing, but for whatever reason, I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, there was just a lot of triggers with them, and still are. Yeah, I don't know what they think about it.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
if it's like a diet, I think they probably think it's a diet thing.
Oh,
And
they diet people?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
every 6 months something new,
Okay.
and every problem in your life is related to your diet.
Mm-hmm. 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 It did. You said they were. You said you maybe you and them are kind of musical, or like the same. Like, do you guys? Are you musician? Are they musicians?
They're not like musicians. They're just a
They're
music.
just.
They
Yeah.
enjoy music. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we like going to the orchestra, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're usually in choir, and they like going to church and hymns, and just regular popular music in
Yeah. Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
Just musically minded. My wife
Yeah.
plays the piano quite well, and we have guitars and violin and things like that.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Well. Yeah. We're already getting
Yeah.
close to an hour. um. Do you, yeah. I guess maybe we can start to wind down slowly. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Jeff. Any kind of like other things you want to share with people? I know you haven't heard too many episodes, but I usually just kind of like to ask it without, I don't want to put you on the spot, but anything you want to share with people about your story, or maybe things you've heard.
Well, I don't know. I mean, this conversation, I feel like it's just been a whirlwind of activity. I feel like we've been bouncing all over the place.
I tend to do that. Yeah.
I I'm just thinking like, are they all like this? Yeah, but yeah, it's I guess that's kind of my life in a nutshell. Is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was using this conversation as a bit of a as a segue into describing my life. It has just been, okay, we're doing the miso thing now. Now it's OCD, and I'm checking my lock. I'm driving 2 miles down
Right.
the road, and I know I locked my door, but I still got to drive 2 miles back and waste 10 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and go, full on crazy OCD crap, and then just kind of back and forth, and I I don't know. It's been rough. I don't have I guess my biggest, if I had to give a message of hope, is just to just persevere and keep moving forward. And if I could have done a few things differently, it'd be try to explain to people better. I mean, I think now we have so many more resources where we can point people in that direction, especially when you're like a child. There's opportunities to have like faculty staff understand these things, or at least know about them, so they can talk to the parents who may not have a clue. In my situation, for example, there could have been conversations happening that no one knew about. But now, of course, there's those with the internet and everything going on, and with technology. There's no reason why you and I should have to go through that again. But yeah, I think it's getting better. Like, as I alluded to earlier, I went out for a wonderful supper last night with a bunch of people in a quiet room, and I did great. I didn't even think about it. Um, and yeah, I mean, trying to find a good employer who will bend over backwards to help you out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I guess having a good work ethic and providing a skill that they need and want from you gives you
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
of leverage. If you're going to be a dupe of an employee, don't expect your employer to go
Right.
out of their way for you. You got to work hard in this life, and
Yeah,
then things improve.
yeah. And you said, I think you said at the beginning that, yeah, it's been rough, but it seems like now, would you say it's kind of in a better place now because like your work understands and your wife understands
Yeah, I think.
in general, but generally like, would you say like objectively though, you're still like, if things were reversed, like if you just happened to be in a less cool job, or, not as great of a relationship, like your miso is just as strong as ever.
Yeah, I would say it'd be just as strong as ever,
Hmm.
probably. But and I would probably most likely be handling it a lot more immaturely and out
Right.
of.
Yeah.
I feel like I just have more control in my life,
More agency.
more
Yeah.
agency, because I've gone into these things. Like, I went into my marriage, like, hey, this is what's
This is
gonna.
what's up.
And
Yeah.
I went into my new job, like, hey, this is what's up.
You're gonna shut the f up. Yeah, but
Like, this is, and it takes
that's
time.
cool.
You're not
I
going to
don't
be
know
able to
if
do
I've
that
heard.
as like a 20-year-old right out, out of
Yeah.
college. You
Right.
need to have like you need to have something to offer for them to work with you. I mean, that's just the nature of it.
Yep.
I mean, until it becomes like some sort of recognized condition where they have to roll the red carpet regardless. Uh,
Right.
but that's just not the reality in the real world for at least this.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that's right. You're right. I mean, things get better because, not necessarily because your miso gets better, but you have more agency. Also, you learn these things. Like, if you stay at a company long enough, it's harder for them to hire a new person than to just make you a little bit happier.
right.
So keep making them happy, and they'll make you, happier exponentially more. So,
Yeah, and that's yeah, we both understand that and are striving towards that. And I've worked a lot of jobs in my life where fortunately I've had not a lot of people around me, so it was never an issue.
hmm.
But I've also had a lot of jobs where it was an issue and I didn't handle it very good. So
Mm.
it's taken a
What
lot
were
of.
some of those? Yeah, we talked about the chipmunk lady, but we didn't talk about your did you George Costanza out of a job? I don't know I don't know if you know the Seinfeld reference,
Yeah,
but did you?
maybe as many as George. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how many. I haven't watched all of Seinfeld, but
Yeah.
yeah, I was. George Costanza on more than one occasion. It usually wasn't miso related. It was just, but it was. I don't know if any was specifically miso related, but that was just my personality in the 20s. But I've had some George Costanza moments, like where I would just leave for half a day or go for like a long walk on like every other day, sometimes for months.
Wow. So what was going on there? Was it an open office? Was it just
Yep,
somebody writing? Okay.
it was an open office in the basement of my employer. So you had like a setup in a basement, and there'd be days where there would be like a snow day, so his kids wouldn't be at school, and they'd be running around screaming and jumping around upstairs, like literally right above our office. And then just mouse clicking became a huge thing. Keyboards for whatever reason were fine. Mouse clicking just drove me over the wall. And then even simple things like somebody taking a sip of their coffee or their tea and setting their cup down, if I like just stuff like that. And we were really confined in this area, and I couldn't deal with it.
This is so weird. I don't mean to digress. I don't going to go on a tangent, but I mean, I've had a previous job where I worked out of my boss's basement and had similar sounds and had kind of an anxiety attack. You know, I grew up in Canada. My dad's 12 years older than my mom. We have I have one younger brother. It's an interesting.
Wow, you're like what do you call it?
Brother from another mother.
That's interesting.
And Seinfeld fans, maybe that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So. Interesting.
Well, that's cool. Well, maybe with you
and we're
being
engineers.
so close by, we'll have to actually meet up and go for a coffee or something.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be quiet. Trust me. Well, cool, Jeff. This has been super interesting. I know we jumped around a lot, but that's, as your wife will maybe tell you, that's what I kind of do. Because that's the only way we can kind of cover all these topics in an hour. But yeah, I mean, you know, I'm always open to at a later date talking more. But this is great. Yeah, thanks again for coming on, and I hope this was fun for you too. I know you don't talk about it too much.
It feels good to just kind of lay it all out there. I just feel like I'm at a good place. You know, my wife shared the podcast with me, and I was like, yeah, I'll go talk to this guy. That's fine. I'm comfortable with it. It sounds like you are too. I appreciate what you do. When I get a little more spare time, I'll try to dig in and see what some of these other people are going through, and hopefully, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of resources out there. But you know, I feel like I got a pretty good grip on it. Just living my life, and you know, it's getting better, you know, but I don't have the perfect summary of how or why, but
a few of us do. It's just we you know, like you said, after we've had this for so many years, we kind of figure out what works for us in certain situations, and that's all we can hope for. For most people. So
it'd be wonderful to catch up, you know, maybe in 5 years. Hopefully the triggers from the kids stay away.
Thank you again, Jeff. I hope we can hang soon, and there seems to be quite a community of us here in the Midwest. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this show. You can hit me up by email at hellomisophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. The easiest way to send a message probably is Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. Follow there. On Facebook or Twitter at Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. The music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.